went to Northside High School, but we didn't meet each other all during high school. Except one day, I was co-editor of the school paper, and I was going back to the assignment board after school to give the assignments, put them up on the bulletin board. And he had come up after his brother Ray, and he had his feet out in the aisle, and I stumbled over him. And that was the first time I fussed at him. I said, "Why don't you keep your big feet out of the way?" And he said, "Oh, I'm sorry." And then one night, another girlfriend and I were coming home from the skating rink, which was on the far side of Fort Worth, and we had to transfer. So we got off of one bus, and we were running across the street to catch the other bus, and Ed and Ray and Bill Ravy were waiting at the flight for it to change when Ray recognized me, and he leaned out the window and yelled, "Hey, Jody, where you going?" And I said, "We're going home." And he said, "Well, we'll take you home." So my girlfriend Evelyn and I said, "All right." So we got in the back seat of the car, and the boys were in the front seat. In the meantime, Bill Ravy climbed over the back seat and was sitting in the back seat with us talking. The next thing I knew, Ray was in the back seat with us. It was getting a little bit crowded. And Ed was going down the viaduct, and he was driving on the buttons looking back, and I said, "Will you watch where you're going?"
Well, I liked the looks of this cute little one, and so I stopped in the middle of the viaduct, which was vacant that time of night, and I told her, I said, "You get up here in the front seat with me." And I said, "I'd let you all, let the rest of them talk in the back seat." So that was our first introduction, and from that, I called her up for dates, and we started dating off and on.
We dated off and on for quite a while. But I was dating other people, and he was dating this little girl. And then I got sort of tired of dating Ed, and I told him to get lost. I was not a very nice person at that time. But I told Daddy, I said, "He's so boring. He just talks about armor and 220 and 440 volts, and he won't let me talk about presses and my jewelry counter." So anyway, we broke up, and I was dating other people. Then the war, of course, went on, and Ed and I met outside of a jewelry store on the night before he was to ship out, or to join the Army. He said he would join the Air Force and that he was to leave the next morning. So I said, "Well, I will write to you if you want me to." And he joined December the 7th. On January, that was 1942. On January the 12th, 1943, his daddy died. And that was when I realized that I cared for him. All I wanted to do was comfort him. And we, another girlfriend and I went to the funeral, and Ed came over that night before he was to go back to Wichita Falls. And from then on, it was quite a different story.
During the year that I was in Shepherd Field, I came home on dates on weekends, and we got to know each other much better during that year. And then by the time I got ready to ship out, we had discussed getting married, and had not made any real strong plans, but I told her at the time that I wouldn't marry her because I was going over and I didn't know whether I'd get back or what. And I said, if I get back, we'll get married. So from that point, things rocked along, and all of a sudden we got the orders to ship out of Shepherd Field. And my mother and brother picked Joe up in Fort Worth, and all of them came to Shepherd Field, and they stayed at the Holt Hotel there in Wichita Falls. The morning that we were to ship out, I met her, met all three of them at the coffee shop, and with my brother on one side and my mother on the other side, and Joe across the table, I proposed to her.
I had to get back to Fort Worth, so I said yes.
And I said, at this point, we're leaving. I said, there's no time to go get you an engagement ring or whatever. So I wrote her a blank check. And I said, since you work for Wolf and Clark Sporting Wholesale Jewelers, I said, you buy your own ring. And here's a check to cover it. So that afternoon, we boarded on the train. I kissed her out of the train window. The engineer gave 3 toots on the whistle and we were gone. I shipped out of Shepherd and went to Denver. And then we went to Camp Kilmer, New Jersey. And from there we left in December of 43, headed for Europe. And while I was in Europe, we wrote hundreds of letters back and forth between each other, practically a daily correspondence. And so we pretty well had our minds made up.
He was overseas 21 months, so my time was spent writing letters to him. I wrote him every day, usually in the morning and then at night. And I think when he got home, we checked our letters because we had them numbered, and to see if any got lost or missing in transit. And between us, we had over 1,000 letters that we'd written to each other. So that was the way I spent my time. Most during the week, I wrote letters. Sometimes on the weekend, I worked at the USO. I wrapped packages and did things like that, but I did not date. I was engaged. I waited for him until he came home.
What'll I do when you are far away and I am blue? What'll I do? What'll I do when I am missing you? Dreams that can't come true. What'll I do? What'll I do with just a photograph to tell my troubles to? When you are gone and I am all alone, I won't have you. What'll I do?
We started out in England on the B-26 squadron. We had 4 bomb squadrons, and we were the service squadron to keep the planes repaired. I was in the heavy maintenance section, or the hangar group, you called it. And anything that couldn't be handled out on the flight line came to the hangar, and we changed engines, changed wings, fuel cells would get shot up. Anything that required several days' work on a plane, we took care of it. D-Day, they flew everything that had wings on it. During the invasion, we flew 3 missions in one day out of our base covering the coast. The planes came back, bombed fuel, and rebriefing the crews, and off again. And they flew 3 missions that day. After the Army got bases cleared in France, we moved right in behind the troops. We were called Invasion Air Force, the 9th Air Force. We moved into a base in, well, just north of Paris, up in a little town called Roy. And when we pulled into that base, they still had snipers on the base, and we were to always travel in 2s, and we carried our guns with us every place. We worked on planes with a wrench in one hand and a rifle across our shoulders. After doing a lot of bombing from that base in France, we moved then into Belgium, where we were trying to work closer to Germany and bomb closer into toward Berlin. And we were in the base in Belgium when the war ended. None of us got hurt, surprisingly enough. That's the small, amazing part, that we didn't get hurt. When we were in England, they would fire them from the Palais de Calais area in France, across the channel, and they would aim toward London. Anything, we were 20 miles north of London. Anything that London didn't catch, we caught, because we were downrange for the shooting gallery. And I've seen many a buzz bomb come over our base. We had one come down the Company Street one night that it was about 12 foot high, and we could read "Made in Germany" right on the bottom of the bomb. The little putt-putt engine on top, we could see the change of color in that, just like looking at a bright red stovepipe. That bomb missed us, fortunately, and went over, missed our hangar, and blew up on the west side of the base. We did have quite a few German air raids, blackouts, and that sort of thing after we got into France, because the base that we were at in France was an old German base, and they knew basically where it was, and they would try to come over and bomb us at that base at night. They never were fortunate in doing so. We had 90mm anti-aircraft guns around the base. Many times when they would fire, that shrapnel would come raining back down on us, and we always got out of bed and put on our iron helmets and stood straight up and made the smallest targets. None of us, it's amazing that none of us really got hurt with all that shrapnel and scrap iron raining down around us. After the atomic bomb was dropped, we were scheduled to load on trucks that morning, and we had one little portable radio that everybody was crowded around listening to Armed Forces radio and the news about the atomic bomb. We had no concept of what it was other than it was a biggie. We shipped out and went down to Marseille. When we got there, they met us at the gates and said, "You guys are going home." Well, like all Army rumors, we believed it. So we were very nervous about whether we were going back up into Europe, whether we were going to go to the Pacific, or what was going to happen. We were scheduled to ship the 25th of August, my brother's birthday, the reason I remember it so well. And our CO came to us and said, well, we've lost our place on the ship, so we've got to wait till the next ship. So the 1st of September, we did ship out, and I sat out on the bow of the ship. In fact, I locked my legs into the railing around where what they call the forecastle of the building, cabin part of the ship begins, leaned back against that with my legs locked in the railing. They had big wide railings. And so I watched that ship headed due south out of Marseille. We were pointed right toward the sun. And I knew that if the sun moved to the left side of that ship, that we had made a right turn and were headed towards Gibraltar. If it went the other way to the right side of the ship, we'd made a left turn and was heading for the Suez Canal. And we were scheduled to go through that in the Red Sea and out that way to the Pacific. Well, about noon that day, that sun moved to the left. I like jumped overboard. But I knew at that point we were heading home. Of course, when the ship pulled into New York Harbor and stopped, waiting for the tugs to bring it in, they had big yachts circling the ship with the girls on it, you know, all that sort of thing. Well, anyway, we moved into our berthing spot, and we started coming off the ship, and we had to get from the docks down to a train station several blocks away. I don't know why that was, but I knew some things you never know, which necessitated us marching down the streets of New York, or some of the side streets anyway. We were surprised that the streets were lined with people, and they were waving flags and cheering. We wondered, what are these people doing here? Where are they supposed to be at work? What's all the crowd? We're not conquering heroes or something coming back. We're just a bunch of soldiers coming in, and we really didn't realize that we were early troops back, and we got a New York welcome.
He came through Fort Worth after he came back, and he was on his way to someplace, I've forgotten. But he was supposed to be in Fort Worth, I think, at 4 p.m. The train was scheduled, and it was 8 p.m. before he got in. We were very tired, but we waited and waited. And my mother got so tired she sat out on the railroad tracks and waited. But we did get to see each other, and we're very happy about that.
Anyway, the word got out that the train was coming in, and a lot of people down to meet it. And when we came out of that train, it stopped. We kicked each other in the head and bailed out of that train like you won't believe. And so there were some big hugs all the way around. Anyway, we had to get back on the train after that and go on down to Camp Walmer to get our furlough papers, and from that point then we caught the bus and came back to Fort Worth.
And he came home on Tuesday, September the 18th. We picked him up at 8 a.m. and went to his mother's house for breakfast. And while eating breakfast, he said, turned to me and he said, "What's today?" And I said, "It's Tuesday," and I took a big bite of bacon, and he said, "We'll get married Thursday." And I almost choked. And I said, "Okay." Well, we were very busy the next 2 days because we were married at 10 o'clock on Thursday the 20th and left at noon for Mexico on our honeymoon. We did not have a reception. We had 21 people at the ceremony, and they congratulated us on the steps. I had a little photographer. I think he took 4 pictures, black and white pictures. That was it.
Look at me. I'm as helpless as a kitten up a tree. Feel like I'm clinging to a cloud. I can't understand. I get misty just holding your hand. Whoa, my way, and 1,000 violins begin to play. Might be the sound of your hello, that music I hear. I get misty the moment you're near. You could say that you're leading me on, but it's just what I want you to do. Don't you notice how hopelessly I'm lost? That's why I'm following you on my own. Would I wander through this wonderland alone, never knowing my right foot from my left, my hat from my glove? I'm too misty and too much in love. Too misty and too much in love.
We got married in September of '45, and I went back to work, for Armour. And after working there a while, I had a good friend. His name was Cliff Mehart. And Clifford rode my back something fierce for me to get out of there and go to A&M and take electrical engineering at A&M. He made it almost miserable. He did me a terrific favor, but he made it almost miserable. So I went out and talked to the plant engineer, a fellow named Homer Brown, who had a son at Texas A&M. Homer told me at the time, he says, "You got a day off around here in the middle of the week." And he said, "Why don't you go down to Texas A&M and look it over?" So I went down there with Joe, and she applied for a job, administration.
He picked me up one day. I was working for friends at their music store, and he told me he wanted to go to A&M. I said, "All right, you go and I'll work and help support you." So we took all of our money out of savings. We had $1,700, and we bought this 6 by 20 foot trailer, which we lived in for 3.5 years. And you can imagine having all of your worldly goods in a 6 by 20 foot space, but we did. And we were happy. While we were in our 4th year at A&M, Eddie was born at St. Joseph's Hospital in Bryan, Texas. And we took him home when he was 5 days old, and then I think the next day we left for Fort Worth. And then Ed went to work for Armour's in March of 1951.
1951, after I came back from college, I went down to the old Fort Worth plant to interview or to visit with people I knew there. And Homer Brown offered me a job in the Fort Worth plant. He says, you know the plant? He says, why not? And I said, okay, why not? He offered me more money than anybody else, and it wasn't a bad place to work. And I knew the plant, knew the people, and so I took an engineering job in Fort Worth, and worked then from 1951 until 1983. And during that time, I made plant engineer. Homer was promoted to area engineer, and then I had charge of all the engineering in the old Fort Worth plant.